In just about 15 minutes, I'm going to teach you how I went from this grayscale painting of Ho-Yoon from Squid Game to this colored version. I also want to give a big thank you and shout out to Best Buy and Wacom for partnering with me to bring you this video on their Wacom One tablet here that we will talk about later on in the video. Really quick here, another thing, if you're interested in following along in the video, I actually have a free download of this entire PSD that you can use to follow along if you want to understand what I'm going through a little bit more, because I know it can get a little bit complicated at parts. So the first thing that we need to do here is actually explain how blending modes work, and I'm going to tell you the 6 blending modes that I use to convert things from grayscale to color. If you're already aware of this, just skip ahead in the video. So blending modes are simply just taking a layer. So I'm going to open up this original here and you can see I have the main reference that I used, and you just go up here and hit this right here and you can see all the different blending modes that are available. So the main ones that I use are normal, which is just your basic layer, just acts normally, doesn't do anything special. Then I use 2 layers to lighten and darken. So I use the lighten layer for lightening things and then multiply for darkening things. The next 2 layers I use do the same thing, but they tend to change the colors and make them more saturated or more vibrant. So when it comes to lightening, I like to use overlay, and when it comes to darkening, I like to use linear burn. Now today, we're not actually going to use linear burn for this image because it's pretty high key. And the last layer that we use is, of course, the color layer down here. It is going to be the basis for recoloring an image, and it's really technically all you need. Although, of course, most people say not to use it that much because it can be very difficult. And I want to share really quickly why that is. Right here, what you're looking at is the exact same image as this one, except this one has everything removed except for the color information. And as you can see here, if I zoom in, it looks pretty weird. You can't really tell, you can't even tell who she is really, because values tend to make give us a lot more information when we're looking at things. However, what I will do here is I will take this layer that just has the colors, and I will show you that I have this layer that's black and white, right? No tricks being here. And I'll put this layer over it, and I will change the blending mode of this layer to color. And what you're going to see is that it magically looks exactly the same as the colored version. I'll bring the colored version on top and show it and hide it, and you can't see a difference. This tells us that all we really need is the color layer to color something, but the 2 reasons why we can't really do it when we paint are that 1, this color layer that we see here is incredibly detailed. If I show it to you again, just normally, every single pixel changes very slightly in a way that we can't really tell here. And so if you're going to try to paint this, I mean, look at how weird this looks. You can only tell that her skin is separate from her lips by the color. So it's really, really hard to be able to paint that accurately. The second reason is that normally when you're painting using color, the color sticks with the stroke. But when you're coloring using an airbrush over the painting you did, if you have a very painterly style, it will look a little bit weird because the colors won't match up with your strokes. That isn't a big problem for us today since we're going to be coloring and focusing on the skin. As you can see with the grayscale version here, it's fairly smooth. So let's go ahead and dive right into the different blending modes that we're going to use to color this portrait right now. So if you look to the right in the layer stack, you can see all the layers that I used to color this, and I color coded them accordingly and named them accordingly so it's easier to understand. Now, before you even start doing the colors, I have 2 of these red layers, and these are just the different versions of the grayscale painting I did. The first one looked like this. This is how I normally paint, and it ends up with the values not being too dynamic because I like to keep things safe. But you might want to play with the levels in Photoshop or whatever painting app you're using in order to get it to be a little bit more poppy like this. You can also choose to make it like this at the end, but I like doing it in the beginning so I have a better idea of what's going on. Next up, the first step is probably one of the most important steps that you should try to get right. However, there's 2 methods to do it, so I'm going to show you both and you can pick which one you want. The first one I have here is called option A, and basically you want to start masking out the different areas, but when it comes to skin, you want to just pick the average local tone. And so if we try to average out and estimate what the average skin tone for Ho-Yoon here is, I would say it's about a tan. It's not very orangey, it's very bright, almost white in some areas. So I just put a tan color here and used the color blending mode. You can see this is set to color right here. If I click on it and it's set to full opacity, and I just colored in the areas where her skin is. So the next step you're going to want to do after that is the same thing where you color the different parts of the image. So we still have to color in her shirt, her bra straps, and her hair. And the hair doesn't matter as much because, as you can see in the reference, it's really, really dark and there's only a few subtle hints of color here and there. Before we go on, I want to show you the second method of addressing the local base values, and it's really something that I use for the skin here because her shirt and her hair are pretty basic, like I mentioned before. For the skin, yes, you can do option A where you just do a tan value, but you can also use what we call a gradient map here. And as you can see, if I flip back and forth, the gradient map is a lot more interesting than the basic tan value, although it does look a little bit weird because I didn't spend as much time fine-tuning it. So how this works is basically you just apply a gradient map to the entire piece, and once you click on it, you can go to properties and then click on the gradient map. And as you can see here, different colors map to different values of the value scale of the original painting I did. So I did a dark purple for the darkest colors, moving into a little bit of red, orange, and then a very bright yellow. Then what you do after that is you want to mask it. So I have a selected layer here that is masking the gradient map to only the areas of the skin, and I could have done one for her shirt and her hair as well. That gives you a little bit of a boost in the process so that you already have some color variations before we go on to using the blending modes. So basically, you can pick whichever mode you want to use or whichever option, but I just went ahead and did both. So that's why you see the second option B blue layer here, because what this is just option A, but toned down a little bit to calm down the redness of this option B that I did with all of the interesting values that I used in the gradient map. And of course, we still need the color for her shirt and her hair, so I'm going to turn that layer on too. Now, before we go ahead and talk more about the different blending modes that I use to color the skin, let's talk more about the Wacom One pen display that I'm using. The Wacom One is a 13.3 inch pen display that needs to be connected to a computer device to be able to use it. And honestly, I think you guys can remember that I used it first back on my channel with my PC, and now I'm using it with my MacBook. You can also use it with an Android device that makes it really, really portable. It has a really nice full HD display and has a battery-free pen that works honestly just as well as the other higher-end Wacom display pens. It also has a 26 millisecond response time, and basically what that means is that there's not going to be any lag or ghosting, and you're not going to notice too much latency while using it. It's not going to feel like you're painting in slow motion and this thing can't catch up to you. It's pretty fast. This tablet also has really, really nice integrated pop-out legs here, which are pretty sturdy. I'm going to show you the back here. And it also has some rubber feet if you want to use it flat, like I'm using in this video, which I'm doing just so that you can see it a little bit easier. It's a little bit harder here, but boy, is it a nicer experience to draw on like this. And honestly, it's a good enough angle for me. This is really comfortable and just, again, complements that portability. This is great for people who are a little bit more advanced in their creative understanding and want a little bit more freedom than even something like a big old Cintiq would have, because those things are really heavy. And it's nice to be able to pair this with my MacBook. It's nice to just carry it around and you can use this with any laptop basically, and again, your phone. You guys know I love a minimalist setup, and this is definitely passing the test for me. And let's be honest here, it's the holiday season, so if you're looking to give anyone the gift of art and creativity, this is definitely a great option. And if you're just looking to pick something up for yourself to step up your game and you're used to using a regular tablet that doesn't have a display, this is a pretty good option as well, because you can get a lot more accuracy, I've found, when you have a display tablet versus a regular desk tablet. If you want to check out the Wacom One, check out the Best Buy links in the description or the pinned comment below. All right, so let's do a really quick recap. We did our grayscale painting. We added a little bit more contrast to it. We decided that we wanted to go with a little bit more of a complex option for adding the base values for the skin. We also added the base local colors, let me say the right word, for the shirt and the hair. And now we're ready to move on to adding a lot more of the vibrancy and complexity into the skin. So this next layer I have called base color variation. And this layer is set to overlay because I wanted to start to add a little bit more variation to the colors, as the layer says, and I wanted to add some nice reds to the cheeks here. So if I turn it on and off, you can see it starts to look a lot more alive. And so what ended up happening is that I set this to 33%, and this makes it so that it's not super intense. If I bring it all the way up, you can see she starts to look like she's hit by a nuke and she has nuclear radiation. She's like super, super heated up, like she's been burned to a crisp by the sun. So I brought that down a little bit, and that made the colors look a lot more appealing. Now I want to show you guys actually a little bit more of how the colors should look when they're on their own. So I'm going to go ahead and hide everything here, and I'm going to take this layer, bring it back all the way up to 100%, and we can see here how I decided to pick the colors. So if we start from the hair, I added a light blue and a dark purple to the hair. And if you look here, you can see that those colors are pretty evident in her hair here as well. They're very subtle, but they're there and they help make things a little bit more realistic. And now when it comes to the face, remember we started from this tan value. So I wanted to introduce 3 new colors. There's going to be pinks here for her lips, her nose, her cheeks, and her forehead. As you can see, it gets pretty red up here. And I added a lot more oranges to the bottom of the cheeks and some parts of the arms and the neck. And as you can see here, it gets a lot more orange and darker around here on this side and under her chin there as well. And then the last color I added was a little bit more of a yellow because it starts to get a lot more yellowy in these brighter areas. So you just need to be able to kind of slow down and look and see and squint your eye and see what kind of colors you can see changing under here as you move around the different parts of her skin there. And the key tip to this, as you can see here, is that I used an airbrush. What this allows us to do, like I mentioned before, is that when we stack layers on top of each other, the airbrush allows things to melt and mix a lot easier than if you were to just paint it straight on like you're painting it regularly using opaque brushes. Combined with setting the layers to different opacity levels, so this one again, I'm going to set it back to 33%, really helps with that beautiful layering effect that's going to give us this lifelike skin. So if I turn those layers back on, let's go ahead and move on to the next part. And this one is going to be the cool gray layer. And if you look closely, you can see what's happening. I'm going to turn it on and off again. And it adds a little bit more realism to this. And if we look back, if you remember, if I turn off the main colors layer and I show you the original, again with just the colors, you can see that basically there's 3 colors here. There's the pink for her lips and her shirt, there's the orange for her skin, and everything else is pretty much gray. And so this is a big tip when it comes to coloring skin. A lot of the colors are very desaturated. They're not nearly as saturated as you would think. So when we go back here to our colors layer, these cool grays do a lot to bring the colors back to a realm of reality. And I just use a simple cool gray in the areas where I saw gray in the image. So again, let's hide everything else so that you can see exactly what I was doing here. It might be a little bit harder to see, but I think it'll come up good on screen. So in these cool gray areas, you can see I added a little bit of warm grays to those highlights here. And then you can see the cool grays I just put on the cheeks, a little bit on the chest. If we look here, you can see these bright areas are pretty much gray. Inside her clavicles are pretty gray, and on top of her arms, right where the shoulder connects, is gray, and a lot on the top of her cheeks here. Now you might notice something here, and that's that I'm not really following the lighting of the reference. I wanted to do a simpler, more stylized top-down lighting, and so that's why everything looks a little bit more symmetrical here than it does in the reference where she's lit from the right. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you the rest without actually showing you how they look on top so that we can get through them a little bit faster. The next one is going to be the lips and the accent colors. And so if we look at this, basically, again, it's just a little bit more pink for the lips because I noticed that they didn't show up as well. And then I added some more oranges where I felt that they would be fit. And so let me show you the color layer. This is set to color, and then this one was actually set to 100%. And let me go back. I don't think I mentioned the cool grays. That was actually set to normal and 100% as well. I found that when I just painted the cool grays down, they looked exactly how I wanted them to. Next, we have the bright yellows, and that this was just basically where I noticed that the brightest areas tended to be very cool and a little bit yellowy. So if we look here, you can see those bright areas where I wanted to highlight the forms coming out. So the top of the face plane here, her neck coming down to her chest there, I had a lot of those brighter colors, and I found I needed a little bit of a greenish tone some areas, because if you look really closely, you could see some green hues in her skin. So again, this is basically green, but completely desaturated and very close to yellow, because you know right next to yellow is going to be orange and green. So I just added a tiny little bit of the green there, and you can barely tell, but it really adds a lot once we show you the entire layer stack. And again, like I mentioned before, this layer is going to be set to lighten because I just wanted to lighten those colors without adding too much saturation, because these lighter areas are pretty pale. Now this next layer, you'll see when I show you guys the entire stack come together, is what brings it to life. And this is going to be the subsurface oranges. Basically, this is going to be a color that happens in any skin tone that you see out there. And if we look here, you're just going to see a lot more oranges here. And I painted those where I felt like you see the most intense color changes happening on the skin here. And basically this can have a whole video on it, but basically what's going on is when light passes through your skin, it catches some of the color of your blood and the skin itself, and it comes out another color. And that's what makes it really vibrant. And so this is happening here, no matter where you are. If there's light hitting you, skin has a lot of subsurface scattering in it, and it makes it look very vibrant. That's why our skin looks alive. And if you don't have this, no matter what you do, it can tend to look dead when you're coming from grayscale to color. And again, in order to do this, this layer is set to overlay, and again, 100% in order to brighten it because it's light, right? Subsurface scattering is light coming through our skin. And I set it to overlay because I wanted to change that, make it more saturated. Whereas using lighten would have just added more oranges in a very flat way, not changing the colors around them. And then at the end, you can see this cool wash layer is just set to soft light and opacity 45. Now this one is a little bit separate. I set it to soft light just to lighten everything up a little bit and change the color a little bit. So I didn't mention that in the beginning because I don't use it as often, but think of soft light as just an in-between between lighten and overlay. It changes the colors a little bit, but not too much, and it still brightens things up a little bit. So if we look here, you can see a very light ghosting of the overall value of everything is just set to a little bit of a blue. So with everything here, you can see that this was our final result, and I'm pretty happy with this. Again, let's go through and just quickly hide everything. I love doing this where you get to see the layers come to life and just one by one add all of the steps, and everything suddenly becomes magical and colored. And honestly, it was really surprising to be able to see all this come together, especially with how, everyone says not to use grayscale because you can't do it well, but you can. It depends. You need to have something smooth, and you need to take some effort into making sure your layers have enough layers and blending modes and care to them so that they actually melt and mix nicely together. So let's show you all of the blending modes together without actually showing you the image below it and see how that looks. Now this layer, you might be wondering, what is that, Josh? What is that paint over layer? And basically, if I show it here, it's going to look really weird. This is what I do after I have everything there, and it's like, okay, I'm happy with the colors. Let me just go ahead and paint over them. So if I go ahead and do the big reveal and show you this layer right here, you can see all the colors work really nicely together. So the most important thing I did here, if you notice, is I noticed the top of her mouth over here got really white, and I didn't want that. I wanted the white parts of the image to just be the highlights. So I went ahead and I color picked this area, and I just painted this area on top a lot so that we could have those white areas near her nose and on the highlights of her lips where we wanted. And I'll erase this line work layer because that ended up changing a little bit as I painted. Now you might be looking at that final layer, and that layer looks like this. And honestly, you can see that it's not too different, but basically what I did is add a lot of the finishing touches, added some imperfections on the face. I tweaked the colors overall a little bit more and just spent a few more hours painting, which was really easy because now I have all the colors there. I can just paint and adjust little things here and there without worrying about messing up my image or messing up the values. So that will be it for me today. Please let me know what you think, and let me know if you tried this. Please tag it, let's see, Ergo Color, if you want to show me your process on Instagram. And if you want to check out the Wacom one, check out the Best Buy links in the description or the pinned comment below. And if you want a more in-depth version of any of these tutorials and see how I actually painted the grayscale one, because let's be honest, that is where the bulk of the work was. I spent 3 hours on that painting. If you want to see a very slowed down time lapse of that and have me talking over it, I'm going to be providing that for this month on my Patreon. So please check out that in the description as well. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Keep drawing and stay positive. Peace.